It demands that we tell sinners the whole truth.
We will not go quietly into the night.
Voice of truth says this is for my glory.
Christian Cornerstone Podcast.
Welcome to the very first episode of the 2024 year, everybody. As I currently choke on a couple pistachios that are lodged in my throat. I want to welcome you guys to this. I really do. I've been excited for this. We've promoted this over the past few episodes. Throughout the past few months, I've been really excited for us to jump into this. I came across this, for those of you who might be joining in for the first time, a few years ago. I purchased a 52-week devotional book called The 52 Greatest Stories of the Bible. And this is by Kenneth Boa and John Allen Turner. You can actually find the link to this video or to this book in the description of this podcast. If you want to follow along, I would encourage you to check it out. Please click the link. By clicking the link, you can support us. We get some commission from the purchase. And that's a way in which you can help support this ministry. But the book itself, I came across, I have not even used it. I've opened up the very first week. That's literally as far as I've gotten through it because I pulled it off my shelf. There's a bookmark in there, and that's the most I've gotten through. So I was trying to find out what can we go over with 2024. You know, what would be exciting? What haven't I done? And I was like, you know what? I have this 52-week devotional book. Let's go through that. Now, this entire series that we're going to be going over with throughout this year, it's not going to be a word for word using this book as a guide kind of thing, and basing off the content there. The book itself, I just kind of want to use as a template. With each week, they have certain verses selected, and that's what I want us to focus on. We'll spend the first section, the first amount of time, whatever that might consist of, going over my own thoughts, or we actually have a guest joining us in a few weeks. So he'll be able to share some of his own in there. But we're going to just do it all, what's the word I'm looking for? Personal, organic. I think that's the word. Let's go with organic. I could be wrong on that. But we want it to kind of be organic with that. And then whatever's time left over, I don't have anything else to say. Let's go ahead and crack the book open, share a little bit of insight in which they have. So I want us to use this book, and we'll share actually the verse that's going to be going over with the next week, the previous week. So, for example, I'm currently recording this episode early. It is December 31st of 2023, so there's a week until the actual publishing of this episode. And I have it up. I haven't posted it yet. But such as today, we'll be posting a link or an image of the series with the week and the topic of discussion, as well as the verse. So that way you guys can follow along and read the content in question and be prepared if needed for the time in which the publishing of the episode comes out. And we want to continuously encourage that to really strengthen your faith. Now, it is not going to be covering everything within the Bible. The publishers of this, or the authors, actually explained in the introduction, and this is kind of the same approach we're making because we're using this as a guide. There is more than 52 stories in the Bible. There is more than 52 great stories in the Bible. The publishers, how they wrote this, or the authors, whoever, tomato, they pretty much made this clear. There's more, but for the sake of the theme and the style of this devotional book, we're going to stick with 52. So there's some of them they had to handpick. Some of them they obviously had to take out because you can't cover along this theme. You can't cover everything within the 52 weeks. So I just wanted to make that known. There is a lot more than 52. And again, I want to encourage you guys to get yourself... Excuse me, I am currently choking on pistachios. Okay, I just had to pause right there. I had to go get myself a drink because I was coughing beforehand. Before actually recording this episode, I was snacking on pistachios. And quite honestly, I was enjoying them so much that I didn't get to start recording before I wanted to, or until after I wanted to. But yeah, so I had to get myself some water before I choked on myself and went nuts on it. Pun was absolutely intended. So lost my train of thought because there was a little bit of a time gap from when we started here. Where are we going with? Bottom line is, I would encourage you guys to get yourself a copy of this book and follow along with us. You can get the link in our description of these episodes. It will be available every single episode that we do on this throughout the year of 2024. And then also the link, you can find it in our store page on our website at cc412.org. So if by some reason you miss it, you don't have access to it, go to our website and you can find the book there. And it will also be, in fact, actually, let me do that real quick. I'm going to pin this link. I actually posted the video, or I posted the link to this episode. Not this episode. What am I getting at? What kind of crazy stuff are we talking? To the book itself. That's where we're going with. I posted it a few days ago on our on our Facebook page. So as I'm scrolling here, there it is. So I'm going to go ahead and pin this actually to our Facebook page, Christian Cornerstone 412 Ministries. So you can also go to our Facebook page and find that post, find the link to this book on our Facebook page. It'll be one of the top things you see because it is pinned, and you can get it from there too. So we want to make sure that this is available to you, just sharing everything we have to provide, all the resources we use and everything within this. So we're taking a little bit of a different approach than we will the rest of the year on this particular episode because I'm cheating. There's a couple years ago, I don't remember how long ago it was, I developed some slides for an episode over Genesis chapter 1. So, and I found myself actually, I bought a notebook to kind of keep track of all of this that we're going to be going over with, specifically within this series. And I was writing all this stuff, trying to sort it and everything, and I filled up an entire page of notes, and I was like, wait a minute. This is the same stuff I've already created, or I've already written up. So I went back to my slides that I created X amount of time ago, and I'm cheating. I'm 100% cheating on this. We're going to use that as the springboard or as the content in which we want to discuss. And quite honestly, there is a lot within creation. So there's, what we don't cover is not going to be there is more than what we do cover. So I wanted to make that perfectly clear, a bunch of different directions. And as I was reading it, I was like, okay, cool. We're not going to be able to go over half of this that's coming through my mind. And that's going to be the same thing throughout the entire year. So, and I looked ahead at some of the weeks that we'll be going over within the next few weeks. And one in particular, for example, next week is a Genesis 3 through 11. I can promise you in one episode we're not going to be able to get through all of chapter 3 through 11. So what we're going to do is read through that and pick a section as kind of the highlight of the episode and discuss that. I mean, similar to what we did with our previous series at the end of 2023 with Galatians. So again, I would encourage you to keep your Bible open and throughout the week read the verses in question that we're going to be going over with, just to prepare yourself, gather some insight, whatever it is that you have to do, and enjoy the show. So without further ado, I want us to get into I messed that. I did the same thing in our Galatians series. I was calling Galatians Genesis. I don't know why. Maybe my mind was focused on this, excited, and we just talked about it. But this episode here, Matters of Creation, there is a lot of matters. And there's a lot that we're not going to be going over with. I would actually, in regards to this, I'll try to actually mention this to you, and I would encourage you to check this out. There's a couple articles that come to my mind related to this particular issue that I want to share with you. And you can find them on answersingenesis.org. In fact, we have the book set. I did not come prepared. I want to go to this. We have the book set on our website as well in the store page. And again, all of these are Amazon links, so they'll direct you to that, and I'd encourage you to do that. Purchase through our shop page because we do get a residual from that, a little bit of a commission. So there is a series. It's a 4-book set. And it's currently, I don't know how I had that listed, But it's listed on our website as $55.99, and that price itself was pulled from Amazon. I don't know if that's the sale price or the wholesale price or retail. But you can purchase the books individually, or my personal preference would be to purchase the whole set because I'm a guy that likes books, and you can't just have one. You've got to have it all. So that's my recommendation to you, is to purchase them all. But the ones in question, I think, are just the one that I'm going to be bringing up are just coming from the first 2 volumes, a couple different articles in which they shared. So the big thing that we have with creation, and it really should not even be an issue, there is 2 sides of the coin. There's an old earth, evolution, millions of years concept, and then there's a young earth. Straight, God said it, it happened 6,000 years. And we're going to go over that a little bit within this episode. But there's actually a really fascinating piece that I want to share. Genesis is not just the account of creation, but it's also an example of the blueprint in how we too are to create and to craft, to prepare. My illustration itself might be a little bit rusty, and I would strongly advise you, if you have a better thought, a better way of wording this, let me know. It's still kind of a fine-tuning thing, and I'll talk about that here once we get to it. But some people argue here, in regards to the Genesis account of creation, we have here what matters is that we believe that it did happen. It doesn't matter if you believe in millions of years or that you believe in 6,000 years or 10 at the max, but what matters is that you believe that God did it. And the problem with that, and that can go so far. I wrote about that in my very first book I wrote, and that's the same thing. We could take that same argument to apply to Jesus Christ on the cross. It doesn't matter if it really was Jesus or if he was just some guy or some substitute, but what matters is that somebody actually did die on our behalf. So that argument itself does have a little bit of a flaw there from what I'm seeing. And I haven't personally heard this in years, but it is something that we need to recognize. It is very important that we recognize, did it happen in a literal 6 days, or did it happen in millions of years? We're going to kind of dive into this a little bit throughout this episode. Another argument is, well, day itself shouldn't be taken literally because the Hebrew word is yom, and that can be used to refer to, well, back in the day, referring to a time period, or in so-and-so's days, or even a literal day. I mean, it can just refer to a time period, 50 years, 100 years, thousands of years, whatever it is. So some people would argue that day itself is interchangeable, which it is. But the problem with this particular piece, and I don't think I'm looking ahead of time in my slides to see if I have those on here. I do not have the particular word. But the problem they have, if they're saying, okay, well, you're right, day itself can't be taken literally or shouldn't be. There's some leeway to that. Sure, I'll agree with you to that. But the problem they have is within Genesis, the very, very verses that they question about the usage of the word day, is you also have the measurement of this day within this as well. Let me pull up Genesis chapter 1 here on my computer. I just want to get this word for word. It's obviously, you're going to have it multiple times. I do not have the Hebrew in front of me, but I do remember sharing this previously at a point in time. But taking Genesis 1 verse 5 for an example, God called the light day. See, there's the word day, there's the yom, and darkness night. And here's the thing in which they need to say, is like, okay, well, day itself shouldn't be taken literally. Okay, well, then if you're not doing that, then here's the next piece. There was evening and morning marking the first day. Genesis 1:8. God called the expanse sky, and there was evening and there was morning on the second day. Genesis 1:13. There was evening and there was morning on the third day. So I don't have the words specifically in front of me, but when it comes to the evening and the morning on these days, that itself measures, okay, this is the beginning of this period of day, and this is the end of this period of day. So however you would like to, the people who say, well, day itself shouldn't be taken as a literal 24 hours, okay, well, then they would also have to be in the same mindset. There was evening and morning, meaning that those are not specifically talking about a specific point in time. However, when you look at the Hebrew for evening and morning, you're not going to find any other usage other than evening and morning. That's it. There is no other usage. So the very fact that the Lord has decided to put, I probably even, being that he is an omnipotent creature, creator, I should say, omnipotent creator, the fact that he's putting evening and morning here, marking the first day or second day and third day and fourth day, I would think he knew full well that thousands of years from now, people are going to start questioning how long it took for me to create and how long ago I created. So to stop this argument, I'm going to put these verses in here. I'm going to put that I did these things on this day, and there was evening and morning on that day. And that is something I think is a very big thing in which we can recognize within this, is when this argument comes up. You're going to have these, like, yeah, you can't take day literally in a universal sense to mean 24-hour period because of how it's used in the Bible, but you need to look at the context. And the context within Genesis 1 tells us that a day is a 24-hour period because there was evening and morning on the first day, second day, third day, fourth day. Another argument is that it says that God created the heavens and the earth, not the rest of the universe. I can't even remember what my particular thing is. Oh, I think I remember. The heavens and the earth really encompass the entire universe. The earth itself, including his, hold on, choking on a pistachio. A word of advice: do not eat nuts before you record an episode. Even taking drinks is not really helping out too much. But anyways, besides the point. So the fact that we have that God created the heavens and the earth, and it doesn't say the rest of the universe, but it does. Because the plural, we have heavens, which is plural, and that consists of the blue sky in which all the birds and all the little creatures that fly zoom around in. So there's the one heaven. And then we also have the second heaven, which is the stars in the sky, the cosmos, which we can see with our naked eye, or, in our day and age today, you take a telescope, you can see even a lot further. So God created those. And then there's also a third heaven, which is the celestial, I recently heard it being described as another dimension, which, perhaps it is. I think that would be, actually, scientifically speaking, it would be another dimension. So God created his realm, or his kingdom, so to speak, the third heaven, created this kingdom, this place of where he would reign in the very beginning. Now, he's always existed, and I don't know, obviously, because we don't have anything in Scripture, to my knowledge, to really support this idea, but the fact that there's three heavens, and then God creating the heavens and the earth, I think that would really signify that he's creating his domain of ruling, or setting up his kingdom, so to speak. He's always existed, but the kingdom itself did not always exist. Now, I could be wrong on that. I want to make this perfectly clear. I don't even believe that argument 100%. It's just a theory, just an idea, trying to illustrate this. Now, it doesn't say the whole universe. That is true, but it implies the whole universe when God created the heavens, plural, and the earth. And that shows really shows just how special the earth itself is. I created all the cosmos, but most specifically, I created the earth. And I'm going to show you how I created the earth. But there's also this gap theory people try to put in here, but there's nothing to go with. I mean, there's literally, to my knowledge, there is absolutely nothing that they can use to argue this idea of a gap theory. If it's not there, it's not there. You don't have any way to prove in this idea of a gap theory, much like I don't have any way of disproving it other than what we have in creation. And there's another argument here, Genesis 1 was written poetically, and it shouldn't necessarily be taken as literal. Well, and there's a problem with that. With verses that are poetic, we even, those who write poems, and I'm not poetic, I don't know how to write poems or the art behind it, but it was done with a purpose, not necessarily to say that it is metaphorical language for millions of years or such things, but rather that, to my understanding, poems or writing in a poetic form is a way of putting emotions in there or to emphasize what's actually happening. So that's that's really as far as I can personally go with that. Now the interesting thing is I want to say it's called the Moses controversy, and I only say that questionably because I've watched a couple of the documentaries that they have done. So I kind of get some of the content mixed up as far as which one it came from. And I want to say it was the Moses controversy by Patterns of Evidence. They argue, you actually have goes to a Hebrew scholar to get information. And this Hebrew scholar says clearly, is like, yes, based on Hebrew and, all this stuff that goes into this, Genesis 1 happened in a literal sense. So there's another thing I want us to look at. These are some of the arguments in which they try to put out about this. But even so, I find this to be very fascinating. You also have the genealogies that affirm a 6-day creation. We have these in the Bible. We have from going backwards, and this is really how scholars have really been able to date the age of the earth and how long mankind has been on the earth. It's not these millions of years. I'm sorry, all you old earth creationists, it's not true. And there's a lot of information to support that. But 6 days creation is affirmed. Why? Well, starting from Jesus, going back to Zerubbabel, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, there is a 584-year period. And then from Zerubbabel to David, there is also a 416-year period. Now, if you want to write these down, you can. I'm going to actually go over the numbers again once I finish this list. So that way you guys have time to get paper and everything together. And then from David to the call of Abraham, again, we're going backwards in time. There is a 917-year period. From Abraham to the flood with Noah, 426 years. And then from Noah to Adam, 1,657 years. Now again, if you want to write these down, you can write them down in any order because the final total is going to be the same either way. Starting from the top, 584, 416, 917, 426, and then 1657. The grand total of this is 4,000 years, all the way to the time of Adam. So my question is how, and this is from Genesis all the way to the Gospels. And then we know that the Gospels happened approximately, as of this recording, 2,000 years ago. So that 4,000 from Genesis to the Gospel, that is 4,000 years. And then we have from the Gospel to today is 2,000 years. Last I checked, 2 plus 4 is 6. So that would give us 6,000 years. And I have not personally been able to find this, but apparently there is an assumption or an approximation that it could be at the oldest 10,000 years. I personally don't know how that comes into play, so please forgive me for that. But there's actually some articles on Answers in Genesis. They actually there's one particular article that's one of my favorites. I can't remember what it's titled at, but type in Answers in Genesis Rate Team, RATE team. And what they did is they took some magma, or I can't remember, they took some rocks from these molten fields that were at the oldest known to date, the rocks and the samples in which they took to date no more than 70 years, an approximation. So they took these rocks from these different selected regions, top surface, so they know it's not supposed to be that old, and also the activity that happened historically. So they have an approximation of it, this particular sample is no older than 70 years. And they gave these samples to a couple different organizations to provide an unbiased opinion of how old these rocks were. And they did their dating method, and they came up with completely different, millions or billions of years different dating periods of these same rocks. Now, if this dating structure was even accurate at all, they should be at most a couple thousand or maybe 1 or 2 million years different, but they're billions of years, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. I didn't come prepared for that. That was just a little side note. But that's a little piece I find to be absolutely interesting to really show is like, okay, you cannot trust this dating method in which they use for this material simply based off this one experiment. Taking rocks off the top surface, sending them off to these different organizations, coming up with billions of years different. It's like, you guys are saying that this is reliable information, but the very fact is that I know that I picked these rocks off the top shelf, which would make it the youngest, and you guys are telling me they're super, super old. Not exactly accurate information. So then another thing here that I find to be really fascinating about creation, about Genesis, is the order of creation. Now, what's really interesting about this is when you look at it, and I this is where, well, we'll get to that here in a minute. Where's it at? Okay, 2 slides in. Okay, so we'll get to this here in a minute, but the order of creation really also contradicts this millions of years concept as well. If this idea of the millions of years was even remotely accurate, then here's some problems that I see that we run into. And again, Answers in Genesis, they answer this very thoroughly. They would be the best people to go to for this information. But on day 1, God created light and darkness. And this is from verse 2 and 5. On day 2, God created the skies, separating the waters. Now here's where we run into a problem. Day 3, he created the seas, the land, and the land and plants and the trees. All the vegetation that exists on our planet Earth, he created. On day 4, he creates the sun, moon, and the stars. Now, this is where we actually see the problem. Pollination, or vegetable, I think it's pollination. I think that's the only word we want to go with. We'll go with vegetable procreation. That's the word we want to go with, or duplication. However you'd like to word that. Multiplication. So anyways, day 5, God creates the sea, the birds of the air, and all the flying creatures. And then on day 6, the land animals and man and woman. So within, I believe it's day 5, we have little critters being created. And if this was millions of years, if each of these days were supposedly millions of years, the vegetation should have died out. Because if that is true, they would have to self-pollinate themselves, but not all, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong on this, I'm not a botanist, to my knowledge, not all plants can self-pollinate. They rely on other creatures, such as bees or hummingbirds, to assist with that process. Day 3, these creatures or these vegetations are created, and it's not until day 5 that the tool in which they would need to duplicate is created, the pollination process. So if this was millions of years, many of these plants would have died out. But they have a better chance at surviving and thriving, skipping a day. I mean, there's so many different things here that we see that we can go with, but that's just one of the examples I want us to look at. The order of creation shows that God prepared each thing to happen for the next phase. You have the darkness separating the waters, God creating the atmosphere for all of these creatures, the sea, the land, the plants, and all the vegetation. He creates the sun, the moon, and the stars to measure the days, but also to act as a source of light and warmth for these creatures. Well, it's like, okay, but why didn't he create the sun and the moon and the stars and everything before the vegetation? Because, well, those need light too. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I really don't have an answer. I mean, he could have, but he didn't. I mean, again, a plant could thrive, and you would think because God himself is the illumination of the light at that point in time, however you'd like to go with this, plants themselves can survive without light for, at least a day. And again, I'm not a botanist, so I don't know the exact length of this. I didn't even do any research to look it up. But this is another aspect. So, and then he's creating the food source, or the vitamin D, or whatever else, the UV rays that plants need, creating that. But this is something even mankind needs. We need that warmth of the sun. And the moon, well, the moon itself doesn't really put off much heat, but, I mean, these are things that were prepared ahead of time. And then the creatures and the birds and everything, and then finally the land animals and man and woman on the sixth day. So there's more we could go into with that, and some of you might know certain things better than myself, but that's just one of the things I personally see in regards to creation. But then also, in fact, actually, I need to get my Bible out for this piece here, because I love this. I actually, when I was looking over the notes here, I couldn't remember exactly what it was that I was referring to, but until after I read read Genesis 1, and I was like, oh, that's right. So give me a second. Let me go get my Bible, and I will point some of these things out to you on these next slides. Okay, so this next piece here, we also, within creation, we also see what I have here titled as the intimate relationship. There is 5 things that happened within creation that is very important for us to look at. Number 1, the divine creative word, let there be. We have the divine fulfillment, and there was. We have the divine blessing, it was good. The divine commendation, it was very good. And he blessed it. And this is found in Genesis chapter 2, verse 3. But then we also have this we mentioned the commendation, but we also have this divine schedule. We see that God planned this out to happen as it should in an allotted time. Why? Because he created these things in 6 literal days, and then on the 7th day he rested. So throughout this process, what I think is absolutely beautiful is God is setting the example, not only that we should work for 6 days and then have a day of rest, but also how to create, how to prepare. And this gets into what I call the divine blueprint of creation. Now, this is where I think you guys can, feel free to critique me on this, because as far as the illustration, I'm a little I'm questionable with. This is something I put together. This is what I was seeing with Genesis. So again, if you want to critique this, feel free 100%. I'd be open to that. So first, day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, day 1, I tried to modernize this as much as I could. Day 1, we have the Creator who makes his presence known. He comes into his workshop. He says, I am here. This is what I'm going to do. And then on day 2, he sets a fixed border and works within the confines. So he designs this specific realm of, this is where I'm going to create. I mean, this could be, for an example, well, I guess that's a bad example. But what I think of here is a garden. You have a garden outside your house, and you've set up the fence, the borders, wherever it is, these little planks that you're using to block off where your garden is and where it's not. And God is using that. He's separating the space and the expanses and basically declaring, this is where I'm going to create. And then in day 3, comes up with the provisions of all life. These provisions are the seas, the lands, the waters, the plants, the shelters of various kinds, the caves at this time, or whatever specifically would have existed, plants and trees, types of shelter, types of food and provisions. So everything that's needed for life, he provided on this day. And then he's providing, so these are basically the tools in which you're going to use, the provisions of all life. This would be the tools in which you're using to create. This could be, hammer, nails, screwdrivers, blueprints, a book, a manual, whatever it is, water to refresh yourself, whatever that is. And then he's creating a heat source. He's creating a source of energy, of power, of warmth to keep this material. And again, we're trying to modernize this, but to keep his creation in good standing. Or for an example, you create a car. You provide. He's got all of the tools here. You've got all the pieces and parts of a car, and then finally on day 4, creating the sun, the light, the moon, and stars. you're creating the power source, or you're sticking the power source in there. However you'd like to go with this. Again, this is kind of a 50-50 illustration. And then on day 5, the consumers of this plantation. Day 5, he creates the sea, or the creatures of the sea, the birds of the air, and all the little critters. So we have all of these things created, the consumers of this plantation. And then finally we have, on day 6, God creating the land animals, and man and woman. He's creating the caretakers of all of it. So we really see this step-by-step process of the building blocks of creating anything. Coming up with the idea, or making your presence known in your little shack, whatever that might consist of. Creating this workspace for you to work. Provisions, the tools in which you're going to use, the power source, or food source, however that might look. Creating the plantations, and then finally consumers who take care of it all. On day 6, he's creating these creatures so that they can be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth, according to Genesis 1:28. To subdue the earth, to have dominion, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish in the sea and the birds in the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. So he's saying, I've created all of these things, and I'm blessing it. And my beloved creatures, I want you to take care of it. I want you to enjoy what I've created. I want you to have fun with it. I mean, there's so much there, and there was really so much more that I could go over with. But again, we've got a little bit of time, but I don't have enough notes. So these are just some things I want us to look at when it comes to Genesis chapter 1 and the matters of creation. There's a lot here. Again, there's a lot more we didn't cover, but these are just. I want to try to bring out the beauty of this. It's not just God created, but it's God created. I mean, I don't know how else better to explain that, to be honest, but it is a very beautiful thing. And there's actually a piece. I'll see if I can't find the link. I don't want to mention it too much right now. I'll see if I can't find the link, because I was reading something from Ligonier Ministries years ago in which R.C. Sproul related this. And I want to find that, but before I even say anything about it, I want to see if I can't find the article so that way I can share with you. And I'm just going to let you do that, or let you read that article. So if I can find it, we'll put it in the link of the description. We'll put the link in the description of this episode. But then here's the interesting part. This is the final piece I want us to wrap up with. God rests. He declares the day to be holy, and he sets it apart. He sets it to be unique, to be special. To be I want to say reserved. I don't want to say reserved. That's not the word I want. Just created it special. And the task of creation was accomplished. Now, there are some people, some skeptics, and those who don't know, who try to argue, well, Christians, they should be, keeping the Sabbath, should be obeying it. They don't rest on Sundays or Saturday, tomato. But God is setting the standard. He said, work for 7 days, work for 6 days, and take a break. Now, in the Old Testament, there was a mandate of when this should be. It was, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Okay, take a break on Saturday. Saturday was the Sabbath. In fact, actually, even today, Sunday and Saturday are 2 separate days. I mean, yes, I know there's Saturday and there's Sunday, but we often get it confused, or at least I did when I was younger in the faith. I thought the Sabbath was Sunday. But according to the Jewish calendar, the Sabbath is actually Saturday. Work Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and rest on Saturday. So, and I think this is where some of the confusion might come into play, but the Sabbath is Saturday. And then Sunday is actually called the Lord's Day. And this is a day that was adopted in the New Testament, in which we give recognition, in which we worship. And that's why we go to church on Sundays, is because, this model was put in place within the New Testament. So it just kind of continued over the next 2,000 years. So now the question that we want to ask is the Sabbath. Am I mandated to rest on the Sabbath? Well, I don't have the verse in front of me, but I will say no, because Jesus Christ makes it perfectly clear. He's doing work on the Sabbath because his Father, too, is always working on the Sabbath. Are we supposed to sit around? This was actually a rabbinical law that it was so, to my knowledge, and I actually still need to get a copy of it, of the rabbinical laws. But one of the laws, from what I've heard over the years, is that they were so critical with the Sabbath that they wouldn't even get up to raise a pen to write something down on a scroll. They would actually hire people who were not Jews to come in and work for them on the Sabbath, so that they, could basically just sit on their bum all day and not do anything, because we need to keep the Sabbath. Now, Jesus is not saying that, or God is not saying that we need to honor the Sabbath that way, because there's a difference between a hard labor, such as us going to work for 5, depending on whatever it is that you do, 5-6 days a week, and then taking a break. He's designed us to work for 6 days, and I will admit it's a lot. I work 6 days a week usually. Slow down here in the wintertime, but once things warm up, I'll be back to 6 days a week in the factory, and it's a lot of work. But I'm still thankful that I have that one day to just take a break, relax, and unwind. And that's how God designed us for. But even in that, after those 6 days of hard labor, and when I say hard labor, I'm referring to a place of employment, we still have certain things that we need to do on the rest day. Whether, for myself as an example, various projects, recording these podcasts, for an example, preparing notes, writing, whatever that might consist of, cleaning up the house, dishes, and laundry, whatever else that, chores consist of, those things still need to be done. But you're resting from your hard labor. And that's the example God put in place. God didn't have to rest. It wasn't that he was growing tired and he was like, guys, I need a break. Because he didn't. He's always working. If God rested 100%, the cosmos themselves would fall apart. So he's continuously working. The Sabbath was, I've created, I've done some work, the greatest task, so to speak, that I've ever done. And now I want you guys to take my example and rest. See, if God didn't rest, then we would still be working 7 days a week, because we would see ourselves as, well, God worked 7 days. So that means we have to, because we're not better than God is. He is the example of righteousness. He is the example of goodness. He is greater than us. We are lesser than him. We need to go to him as an example. And that's why God rested, is because if he didn't, mankind wouldn't. And God knows I did not design man to work 24/7. They need sleep. They need a day to relax. And we see this happening, throughout. We have it in the Sabbath. We have it in the Jubilee. All sorts of different ways in which God showed a way in which we can rest. To start fresh. So that's one of the things we need to look at. And people who argue, like, well, you don't keep the Sabbath anymore, it's like, you're right, because Jesus Christ, that was one of the 10 commandments, the only of the 10 commandments in which Jesus Christ abolished. He himself was Lord of the Sabbath. And nowhere in the New Testament is it commanded for the Christians to continue to rest in such a manner. There's nothing against it. In fact, I believe it would still be encouraged. I think we still should rest on the Sabbath. But there's no mandate that it needs to be done. Why? Because Jesus did work on the Sabbath, and, we can too. We're permitted to. You're not required, but you're encouraged. And then also, I had another thought that completely lost my train of thought. Yeah. Yeah. Another thing is, it doesn't necessarily have to be on Saturday. It doesn't necessarily have to be on Sunday. I mean, we all have different schedules, but the point is that there needs to be a time throughout your week in which you take a break. I mean, if you work Thursday through the next Tuesday, sure, go ahead and do that. Take a break on Wednesday. But somewhere in there, just chill. Go home. Go for a swim or go for a run. Work on your projects, whatever those might consist of. Just relax on the couch and read. Whatever you got to do. So, that is really all I have for you guys today in regards to Genesis chapter 1. I hope you did enjoy that. I hope you had fun with it and gathered something new and exciting out of it. If there is something that you've learned or in regards to this that I've went over, or perhaps even some additional insight on whatever that might consist of, if it's something we did not discuss, feel free to put a comment, a link, whatever your source is, whatever your comment is in the description of the podcast. You can find this, actually, we're posting this to our Facebook, so perhaps even share that comment or share that link, whatever that is, with others. Interact and, see what their thoughts are. So after you've listened to this, go to our Facebook page, check it out, and say, hey, I really like this, Bill. I loved how you explained this. Whatever that might consist of, here's a link that for some additional information. Or if, you want to call me stupid and say, you had some really weird stuff that you shared, whatever that might be. I'd love to hear from you guys. Love to get some of that, insight, whatever it is that you have. And all of this is really for the edifying and the building up of the body of Christ. So that's one of the things I want you to consider when sharing your comments is the purpose. Why is it that you're sharing these? And this is something we got to do through all our lives. Is what I'm providing, or is the information I'm sharing, is the purpose to slam a person down? And you take the old earth or the non-believers for an example versus this 6-day creation. There's an ongoing dispute between that, and it's going to continue going until the Lord comes back. But if that's all you're doing, as an example, then if you're just coming in just to mock, it's like, no, we don't need that. We're here to build each other up. We're here to help each other grow in the knowledge of God. And that's what I would encourage you to share. Is there another piece of information that you have to share that we didn't go over with? Is there a piece of insight in which you've learned that you think somebody else might be struggling to understand? I'd love to hear from you guys. So until our next episode, again, we'll have the description or the banner, whatever we're calling this, on our Facebook each week prior. So, but also share it with you in these episodes just in case you haven't got on our page yet and saw what was coming up. In the next episode, we will be going over, there's actually a particular piece I'm going to go over with, so we're not going to cover the entire section in our next episode. But our next episode will be discussing Genesis chapter 3 through chapter 11, the fall and the dispersion of man. So I'd encourage you guys to check that out throughout this week. Perhaps read Genesis 3 through 11, and we'll go over that with you next week. Oh, so that is all we have, and I'd also encourage you guys, like, subscribe, follow. Almost forgot about this, by the way. Like and subscribe to us on Spotify. I'd strongly encourage that. You can do it wherever, really. Either Apple, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast platforms. Just a personal preference. We would encourage you to subscribe to us on Spotify because of the analytics. There are certain things that we grab from Spotify that can help to improve this podcast. So I'd strongly encourage that. And then also, if you feel as if you're grabbing something from this, you feel as if this is a very faithful, very beneficial ministry, I'd encourage you to become a supporter through our Patreon page. Again, the link will be in the description below. This is set up as a membership, and our members, there's a few things up there. We're working on adding more. But in fact, at the end of the year, because I don't want to give away spoilers just yet, at the end of the year, we'll create a little bit of an outline or provide a little bit of an outline of this series to kind of just help you. It's not going to be in depth because of what we're already promoting here. We're already promoting this devotional book as well as the content we're reading over or we're discussing. So it'll be just an outline of the entire series which you can use, and we'll have that accessible. That's on the to-do list. It will not be ready anytime soon. But becoming a member and supporting us will actually open up. Not only will you help to offset our cost, you will also expand our outreach, and you'll also be unlocking some certain things as so-called VIP of this ministry for supporting us. So without further ado, I hope you guys have yourself a very wonderful new year. And until our next episode, God bless.